Welcome in everyone to the Pro Football Plus YouTube channel. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and set notifications for all things football and college football, not just pro football. Today we're talking Washington Commanders offensive line, getting ready for the 2025 NFL season. It is fast approaching. We're, I think, 7 weeks now, from the start of football, NFL football again. And I'm very excited that 7 weeks is gonna fly right by. Um, Ben, how are we doing tonight? It's been a couple weeks since we've been on. Anything new in your world?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be talking about the Commanders, specifically the offensive line. I've been on to them for 2 or 3 years about this offensive line, so I'm really, really, really excited to talk about that specifically tonight. We've been doing a bunch of coverage on this network. We'll talk about more about that later. And of course, I got my pregame meal here tonight. I have blackberry cobbler tonight to go with
Ooh,
my Mountain Dew. I am doing great.
I think that's one of the more normal things you've had. Now I've not had blackberry cobbler before. Is it good?
Yeah,
It sounds good.
okay, this is specifically, and I'll be quick. I know everybody's here for the Commanders. We have blackberry bushes growing wild out here in our yard. We're not in the suburbs. We're in the kind of the country. Lots of blackberry bushes only during the month of June. We pick them ourselves. We freeze a lot of them. But my wife took quite a few of them and turned it into a blackberry cobbler. And it is awesome. So thanks to the wife, and blackberry cobbler is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean I'm not a big blackberry person, but I feel like that would be really good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, the YouTube channel is now getting some of the podcast stuff. This is usually a podcast shtick that we do, but it's got to make its way onto YouTube.
They're
It's
kind
got
of stuck with us, yeah, at this point.
to. Before we get into the offensive line, though, it's June. There's no football. NBA Finals just ended. Baseball, we're kind of in the dog days at this point in the baseball season. So, I was into the games and stuff. Then we started losing, Washington Nationals, that is, and it's kind of like if the game's on, I'll watch it. If not, then so be
Right.
it. But that being said, we have nothing to talk about. So, what are we going to talk about but random stuff that, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't matter? However, this has me excited, and I've been begging since the dang name changed. Is new uniforms? Are we getting them? Um, you're not probably not familiar with them being in your area, but um, on the Kevin Sheen show, it's a bigger one of the local radio shows. Kevin Sheehan, he reported that new uniforms are on the way, that they're most likely going to be an alternate for this season and then become a permanent uniform with probably some minor tweaks here and there for the next season. Um, he doesn't really, I mean, he claimed that he didn't really know anything else, what they're going to do to it, how big the changes are going to be. But man, this photo here in the middle here, with Jane Daniels just staring at that spear or the arrow, whatever, that's not on accident. I refuse to believe that that was. It's like, oh, no one will know. What harm could this do? Like this is a team photo right here that was released, and obviously you see on the screen here some of the older uniforms that were worn inspired by that arrow or spear or whatever it is. The left one being kind of a fan mock-up, but this was my least favorite of all the uniforms that we've had over the years. But I much prefer this than anything we have currently. And I would be so happy, so ecstatic that we get something of old back to it would just make the experience, especially going to the stadium and all that, it would make it so much better. Just the feel, the vibe. I would be so happy if anything changed to look like this. Um, Again, it's June. We have nothing else better to talk about, but it gets me excited. If this is true, um, I would be so thrilled as a fan.
Totally agree. I've been banging on the Commanders to get rid of that name and to get rid of the W forever since they got it. Please get rid of that.
Yeah.
It's not the ugliest uniform in sports, but please get rid of this. This is ridiculous. Let's get rid of the football team nonsense, the Commander nonsense, the W nonsense. Please get away from this. And listen, my preference was those beautiful colors that they used in the 80s. I thought that was so sharp. I
Yeah.
thought a lot of NFL uniforms from the 80s were so sharp. But I would love this, get back to the team's tradition, right? Back in connection with what your whole history of the team has been, but also honoring the Native American tradition, right?
Yes.
Which I also love all that stuff. It's all disappeared, man.
Yep.
You don't see it anywhere. It's almost like they are a forgotten people now. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, there's so much to enjoy and celebrate, and they're left now to reservations and history books and museums. And I'm like, come on, man. I love what this might be. We'll see if it actually comes back or not.
Well, I mean, we will see. My guess is, and this has been this way for a while, um, that no name will change until they've broken ground on the new stadium. That, because politics and because, DC is typically a very liberal area, that no movement on the name is going to happen until the stadium, like, until the ink is dry on that contract and ground is broken on the new stadium because I mean, who knows what the city of DC will put in there in terms of what you can and cannot do as a
Right.
franchise, but I'm convinced that. But the unfortunate part is if we keep winning, and this I can't believe I'm saying this is a weird sentence. What a time to be alive as a Washington fan. If we keep winning, and even if we won a Super Bowl, the name's not changing. It's not going to change. They can't. I mean, how could they be like, yeah, we're going to go back to this thing? There would still be a majority of the people that would want that changed, but it would start shrinking more and more
Listen,
as we
I
keep
don't care
winning.
what you call it, just not commanders. Like you can call it warriors, you can
Yep.
call it the spears, you can call
Yep.
it the wolves. I don't care. Just not commanders. My gosh,
I
get
know.
off of that. That's just that's not as bad as the Cleveland Guardians. But goodness
Yeah.
gracious, could we have any more generic,
Yeah.
vanilla, nothing names that mean nothing to anybody? Come on.
I really thought, what was that? Gosh, it's probably been a while now. The New Orleans Pelicans was bad. Um, but this is worse. This is worse. But I digress. Something to keep an eye on. We'll definitely be talking on this in a future episode if it does in fact happen. Because they need to release like a uniform schedule, like with the schedule every team
Yes.
has to. So it's coming at some point. If there is an alternate for this year, it will be announced within the coming weeks. It has to. So offensive line, you ready?
We're ready, man. I'm
All right,
stoked.
all right. So for you guys that don't know Ben, which I mean, if you don't know this about Ben on his channel already, then either you're new, which welcome. But if not, you know Ben is a big offensive line nerd. Him, Simon Short, Shane Ratliff, like they're big
Yeah.
offensive line guys. And this is his bread and butter right here. I will default to every opinion I have. I'll probably still keep it to a point, but I will trust Ben's judgment and Ben's opinions on this. Generally speaking, about our offensive line, we've typically agreed most of the
Yeah.
time on this
Yeah.
stuff. But obviously, I'm going to default to you on a majority of this stuff. Here I have a breakdown of obviously it doesn't include any undrafted free agents that have been signed, but these are all the notable rookies and veterans that are currently on the roster for 2025 going into training camp. As well as their cap hits because we're financial guys. We like looking at numbers. Um, Biggest standout to me is one, the depth, and then two, no bad contracts on this thing. Even these larger
Yeah.
numbers on here, I don't
Yeah.
have it on here because there's not enough room on the slide. Um, you can get out of the Andrew Wiley contract after this year, the Laramie Tunsil contract after this year, even the Cosme contract you can get out of, even though that was just signed last year, you can get out of at the end of the season. Biotish as well. So like if any one of these mainstays, right, currently who is a mainstay, um, you're okay. Like you can get out of it at the end of next season. So I think that's something that especially you have focused on is, how does the contracts look for any given position group? There's no bad
Yeah.
contracts here.
Totally agree on everything you just said. And that's one reason I'm so excited. The depth we will get to here in a minute, but just on the money side, you're looking at what, slightly north of $50 million for the whole group here, maybe 53 mil, give or take a mil.
Yeah.
That's not bad for an offensive line that we think is going to be pretty good. And quick plug here, me, Simon, and Shane over on the Box Score Network channel, YouTube channel, we're doing 1 through 32 NFL offensive line rankings here in just a few weeks. So check it out over there. It will be there. And the Commanders are moving up that list, all right, as we speak. And it's an exciting place to be. But you're not paying a ton for it, you know? You're going to have to pay something because even if you start drafting brilliantly on the offensive line, which I think they've started to do, every 3 or 4 seasons, you're going to have to keep paying another one of those guys, right? So
Hmm.
you would only get maybe 2 years of benefit from drafting well before you got to start paying them anyway. So $50 million is a good sweet spot to be in for an offensive line. It's not cheap, but it's not outrageous either. And I really think the Commanders needed to do it.
Obviously, the goal is, the standard is Philadelphia, where they just have a pipeline.
Right.
Like, we don't want to pay this guy. Great, we got your replacement that's just as good, if not better.
Yes.
The Lions have done this to an extent. The Colts have tried to do it for
Yes.
probably a decade plus now, and it hasn't really worked for them. But at least they're trying. I'll give them credit for that. Um, but I'm hoping that this is starting, the starting of something like that, to where it's like, okay, we're going to draft a couple offensive linemen every year. Coleman last year, Connerly this year, um, and we're just going to keep bringing in young guys. And I'm 100% fine with that. Um, Everyone's like, kind of freaked out during free agency and the draft. It's like, well, we didn't really do that much. This is where we did most of the
Right.
heavy lifting was right here. We traded
Yes.
for Laramie Tunsil. We gave up a good bit to get him. Okay. We spent a first round pick on Josh Connerly Jr. We brought in Nate Herbig, we brought in Foster Sorrell, and they're not big names, but they're solid guys that can step in and start. You don't want those longtime starters, but they can. And that's the important part, because depth has been such an issue over the years, that it didn't matter who your starting five was. If they get injured, you don't have nothing to replace them. And even then, the
Mm-hmm.
starting five hasn't been that great over the past 5, 6 seasons. But now it is. I think there's an opportunity here for, as you mentioned, for this group to shoot way up the rankings.
100% agree. And I'll even throw in some more team comparisons here while we're on it. The Green Bay Packers are a team who pipelines pretty well too. Never to the elite degree that the Lions and Eagles have done, right? But
Hmm.
kind of a cheaper version. The Packers continue to pipeline, usually have some kind of a decent offensive line sitting out there, and usually replacements lined up year by year. But you mentioned people being aggravated that, hey, maybe we didn't fix defensive back the way we wanted to. We didn't fix linebacker depth. We didn't fix edge rushing yet. You had too many holes. You can't fix them in one off season. And what we've seen the Eagles do over the years is focus on one position group that they wanted to fix. We've seen the Kansas City Chiefs do that. Just let's focus on one group. Let's get it fixed. Let's fix that. And if we can fix another, partially give another group attention during the off season, we'll do it. But we cannot fix everything in one off season. So we're going to fix this, whatever the worst thing is, or whatever we feel the most important thing is. We're going to fix this, and that's what Washington has done. I really like that approach. I really, really, really like that approach, knowing that you can't fix everything in a single off season. Let's get one thing for sure fixed, and then move around each next off season.
If you can have some combination of Tunsil, Connerly, Cosme, and Biotish, like for the next 2 seasons, to
Yeah,
me, or 2 to 3 seasons, I mean, that's your offensive line right there. I mean, if one spot's going to change here and there, one spot's going to fluctuate. I'm not going to say that's not a big deal, but it's not a huge deal. And it allows you're not paying any of these guys massive amounts of money. I mean,
right.
Tunsil's going to want a contract, uh, extension here soon, but again, and that's going to be a pay bump, but it's not going to hurt, your entire offensive line. There's still plenty of resources there. Um, so I'm very excited for this group. Um, I think there's a lot of potential here. Obviously, potential is nothing until you start playing, and that potential gets realized. But this is the best situation we've had probably since 2015, when we had Trent, we had Brandon Sheriff. I came. gosh, I can't even think the center who it was, but we had a decent, pretty good center at the time. That's gonna bother the crap out of me. Uh, Gosh, I can't think of that whoever that center was. But anyways, we had most of the offensive line figured out. This is the best situation we've had in
Chase
10
Roulier,
years.
right?
Chase Roulier, yes, thank you.
Yes.
Yes. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't think that's really up for debate, but yeah, best offensive line we've had in 10 years.
Yeah, it's not, because even you could go back 4 or 5 years and say, well, we got two or three pretty good ones, but it doesn't have the depth or the width this one has. I had it pulled up ready to go because I wanted to talk about it. The 22 lineup that the five guys that got the most starts was Charles Leno, Andrew Norwell, Tyler Larson, Trey Turner, Cornelius Lucas. Couldn't
Good
even
God.
touch. I mean, man, you go back to the 21 season, it wasn't any better. You're looking at Charles Leno, Eric Flowers, Chase Roulier. Well, no, that's the wrong direction. I'm sorry. Let me catch the 23 here, because that was the one I was aiming for, because the 21 was better.
Yeah.
23, Leno, Sadiq Charles, Nick Gates, Samuel Cosme, Andrew Wiley. I mean, this by far, talent, depth, quality starters is better than what we've had in probably 3 or 4 seasons. And even you go back to 4 and 5 years ago, it wasn't great, right? It's just like, hey, we
Right.
got a couple of guys.
Right. Now, I do have Brandon Coleman here listed at guard,
Yes.
because the coaching staff has said that he is transitioning to left guard. Um, Not right guard, left guard. They were very specific about that. Um, that doesn't mean he's starting at left guard week one. That just means that he's kicking inside, which obviously you said it as much. I know Simon did. They saw him as more of a guard to begin with, coming out of TCU.
Yeah.
I thought he did a decent job last year at tackle. I would have liked to have seen that kind of realize it, give him a shot at right tackle, but obviously since the Connerly pick, that's probably not going to happen.
Right.
So as long as we have the five best guys out there, and they all fit in the right places, I don't care what you play. You know, I really don't. If he's the next guard of the future, left guard of the future, fantastic. That's one spot we don't have to constantly mess with.
Yeah.
Um, I'm more than okay with that. But that just means then that there's gonna be, and we're talking about here in a minute, that there's gonna be a logjam at right guard where you have Nick Allegretti, who played decent last year. He wasn't great by any stretch. He was very average, but he played decent last year at left guard. He's gonna be competing at right guard. Nate Herbig, he didn't play last year due to injuries, but he's gonna be competing. And then Andrew Wiley, who is listed at tackle, but if Josh Connolly does start week one, he's going to be a swing tackle. I think he's more. Me and you have said this for years. We've said it multiple times on this show. He's better suited at guard anyway. Just kick him inside. Why are we forcing this thing at tackle? But I digress.
Yeah, I totally agree on everything you're saying there. To me, if you had to put Coleman at a tackle spot to get by, then fine, you do it. But I don't think you have to. Between the talent that Connerly offers and the talent that we know Tunsil has, I love plugging in the talented guys at tackle, and you plug in Coleman there at the left guard, and then yeah, you're log jammed really with true pure guards who could kick out the tackle, and that's Allegretti, Wiley, Herbig, etc. And that's a nice problem to have, right? That's
Yeah.
I would much rather take fringe tackles, push them into guards where they look a lot more comfortable than to be doing the opposite. So it's a nice problem to have. Still question marks. Some of this is unproven. Some of it hasn't yet even had a chance to work together, right?
Yeah.
But this is a beautiful spot to be in terms of the potential sitting here, because I'd much rather have the talent out there at the tackles and be pushing guys into guard than I would be trying to kick guys out the tackle, because we just didn't have enough talented guys.
No, I know we've probably said this before, either here on the podcast, but just reiterate in like 30 seconds to a minute your evaluation of Josh Connerly.
Yeah, listen, I I love Connerly. All right, now
Hmm.
I anytime you've got an offensive lineman, because I won't get into Connerly Tech here, any offensive lineman, rookie, it may be 2 full seasons before they really show what they can do. So it might be a rough first season, you know, it might be a
Yeah.
rough second season. You see that with the offensive linemen. So I wouldn't expect too much. You might have to help him out with tight ends and fullbacks a lot this year. Okay, he may be even Ola Fashano, who some people like with the Jets. Still a lot of penalties up there. He's still developing. So, going to have to give him a year or two, but I think that's the right move. And I do love Connerly.
I mean, it's nothing different than what you had to do with Wiley last season, right?
Right. Right.
So, but at least there's upside and potential here where a lot of
Yes.
you said as much. A lot of these national scouts have said that if he had stayed at Oregon and came out next year, he'd be a surefire top 10 pick.
Yeah.
So that tells me that there's at least the talent is there and that
Right.
the ability is there for him to at least hold his own enough to where you don't have to worry about him too much. Yeah, you're going to have to help him. He's going to make rookie mistakes. He's going to have dumb penalties, but we should understand that, right? As fans, we cannot be killing this guy week 4 because he had 2 holding penalties that killed drives, which yes, it is going to suck, but
Right.
that's what happens when you draft young players
Mm-hmm.
at these positions that take a while to develop in.
It is, and that's one reason why I do love the depth here. You should have people that are comfortable in their spots. Like if Wiley's playing the guard, Biotish will be comfortable at center, Tunsil will be comfortable at left tackle. It's not like you're trying people in all new spots, right? They've
Hmm.
played this already somewhere other than Coleman at left guard. And I can't remember if Coleman's done the left guard thing or not, but you've got guys who are comfortable already in their spots. So when you add on a rookie, that's one. I don't like playing musical chairs with offensive linemen during the season, but during the off season, you figure out where you want them to be, you plug them in. If you're adding on a rookie to a bunch of guys that already kind of feel good in their spots, I'm a lot better with it. Even if the rookie is struggling, you just send him the help. Hopefully, you're not having to help Tunsil out at all.
Right. Here is just a breakdown here of 2024 PFF grades for all those that qualified um, that are currently on our roster. Obviously, Larry Tunsil was in Houston last season, and some of these other guys were elsewhere, but um, I just want you to kind of iterate because some people look at these numbers and this is the end all be all for some of them, right?
Right. Right.
Not for me. This just provides a bit of context. When you do your offensive line, evaluations, how heavily do you rely on these? Do you rely on them at all? Do you think it's total BS? Because it's hard for even these people that are grading these offensive linemen to even know what their assignments are, what the concepts are, and so
Right.
forth. How much do you value these PFF grades
Yeah.
with
I,
offensive
I
linemen
put
specifically?
that, and I appreciate you asking. I put a solid value on them. Now, if you dial the clock back 4 or 5 years ago, I was finding grades I disagreed with, and I was really one of the kind of not the earliest, one of the early people who was kind of speaking up and saying, hey, PFF is not the be all end all. Unfortunately, what has happened over the past 4 or 5 years, there's a lot more people because there's more people studying this than ever, right? There's a lot more people criticizing PFF than ever and just crushing the grades and being like, yeah, it's worthless. I don't use them. I don't think that's right. I really, really do not agree with that. I think PFF does a very good job. And the way I do it, I'll do my work first and then I'll roll over PFF and see what they're saying. And usually I'm within a range, right? I'm either,
Hmm.
5 to 10% above or below where they're at, is usually what happens. Usually I'm not dead on. The biggest thing I don't like about PFF that I grade personally, I if unless they've changed their grading system, and maybe they have, they often their plus minus grading system, and it's based on kind of win loss. It's based on whether or not you succeeded. Last I checked, and it's been a while, and I even reached out to them a couple of years ago to get more specifics, and they wouldn't give it to me, which is fine. Don't want
Hmm.
to give the secret sauce out. They, for instance, a left tackle getting a lot of help from a tight end game after game. I'll dock a guy big time for that, and I'm not sure that the PFF grades reflect that a tackle is or is not getting a lot of help from the tight end. And I think that's a huge, huge grading issue that I'll add in, you know. But I really do like the PFF grades. I think they do a good job.
I think one of my bigger questions, and maybe this is somewhere in the archives that you can probably find an answer to, is how they handle like handoffs and so forth.
Hmm.
Like, okay, did he just get beat and the guard picked him up, or was it a true handoff on a stunt? Like
Yes.
that that's one of the big things with offensive linemen for me, and also knowing what their responsibilities are, what the scheme is. Like, was he coached to do it that way, even though he got beat pretty bad? Like, was he coached that way?
Yes.
Did the scouting report say a certain thing? Like, obviously, you get beat, but was it really the players? And I'm not trying to put blame on anyone else, but was it really the player's fault that happened? Is he a bad tackle because of that? Like,
Hmm.
those are the situations and so forth that always kind of confuse me with how they grade these things.
Well, and you're not the only one. I can't remember the player, but it's been 2 or 3 years ago. There was a defensive back, a notable defensive back, who chewed out PFF over social media because they had him credited as giving up 13 or 14 completed passes. And he was like, no bleeping way, man. I've given up two. And the PFF people reached out and said, sorry, you're right, but we attribute the way our scoring system works, we attribute the completed pass to the default of whichever defender is closer, whether it's their fault or not. And
Mhm.
that is one area which, again, like the tackles, getting help from the tight end, where sometimes context isn't there, and you really have to do your own homework, right, before you rely too much on somebody else's grading system. But I totally agree. There are gray areas there. And so PFF is a great anchor for me, great foundation. But if I really want to get to know a guy, I'm going to have to get in there and do my own work. And listen, I'm sure somebody in the audience is putting in the comments right now that you can go online and read their grading system. You can't. Okay, I've read every single word that they have posted online about their grading system. It's it's specific to a point and then it quits being specific. All right. And it's not specific any longer. Okay. I get that it's plus minus two or plus minus one or it's a zero. I got all that, but they leave out all the rest about how they grade. And that's fine. They don't have to tell us. But from all I've seen talking with other guys, there is context there that they just don't put into their grading system. But as long as you know that, it's still a pretty good rating system. I really feel like.
There's probably an ex grader PFF employee that's like
Yes.
that went to Reddit, and there's some big thread, I'm sure, but
Give us the
um
playbook, man.
but having that being said, of that conversation, does anything here stand out to you? Because I'll tell you, the one thing that stands out to me is when we traded for Laramie Tunsil,
Hmm.
there was like this massive, oh, he's not a good run blocker, he's terrible at it, like he only cares
Right.
about getting his pass block stats and all that. Well, according to this, to PFF again, however much stock you decide to put into it, that's fine. He was graded the best run blocker of anyone that played on our offensive line last year.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, he definitely at least raises the floor on that.
Yes.
Um, and I think that having him on that left side, along with Coleman, who was a better run blocker than he was a pass blocker, at least at tackle,
Hmm.
is really going to solidify that. I mean, and Biage was just solid all around last year, especially according to these grades. That that's really going to help the run offense and in consequent Jaden as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. So there are two things that jump out here. Number one is something I was going to raise a point anyway about talent wise. There's a huge difference between Tunsil and anybody else on this line. We'll leave
Yeah.
Connerly out of that discussion. It's
Hmm.
not even close. Tunsil is one of the better talents to come out of the draft over the past few years. He hasn't totally even lived up to it, to be honest. I mean, I think
Hey,
there's
you aren't
more that
wrong.
he. Yes, I think there's more he could offer. To be honest, matter of fact, there are times I've watched Tunsil over the years. It kind of feels like he just gets bored. I mean, it really feels like he's just bored out there. He knows he's good, and it doesn't really feel like he's got that angry finish it off kind of mode that you see out of some of the other guys. But talent wise, and you see it here on the grades, he's leaps and bounds better than anybody else on this team. Maybe Connerly being an exception, right? Tunsil's tremendous, but that does show you he can still not be great at run blocking and be a lot better than anybody else on the team. And he's really good at pass blocking. but I still think he can do a better job pass blocking. If he were to really, really get dialed in and focused and show us the hunger that some less talented players show us, I think he could be the best tackle in football. Probably should be, but he's never really shown that uber desire to be that. Still, though, he's tremendous, and Commander's very, very fortunate to have him.
Well, I will say that, a guy like D'Amico Ryans, I think definitely got more out of him than any of his previous coaches did.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I would hope that Dan Quinn could do the same thing because I will say, and again, this is a wild thing to say as a Washington fan, the culture in the locker room is something that where you have a lot of higher profile guys now. You have a Bobby Wagner, you have a Zach Ertz, you have a
Yes.
Marshawn Lattimore, where these guys are, they're typically been team guys, maybe not as much Lattimore, but you've had a bunch of these team guys that are high profile guys that have had tremendous success and have won Super Bowls. And now with guys like Tunsil and Lattimore, who have typically been, I don't want to say like lone wolves or, agitators really, but they're guys that kind of do their own thing. They kind of spout off whenever they want to. I'm wondering if the culture around these other guys, right, um, will help them get more out of those guys, and make them want to push harder.
I would think it has to because you can literally feel the fun and the joy and the energy, the positive energy, maybe not even fun, positive energy coming through this team, starting with when the owner left and it switched over, but
Yeah.
then when they got the coach and the quarterback and they started winning. And but then you mentioned a key name like a Bobby Wagner. You and I talked about it during the offseason. Pay him as long as he wants to play, and then when he doesn't want to play anymore, pay him to be any part of the coaching staff that you and him agree that he is part of, because he will be the presence in the locker room, whether he's a player or whether he's a new coach, one or the other. You talk about a guy that commands respect. I mean, he will do it, and he will control a lot of nonsense. And if Bobby Wagner is telling the front office that you're a problem and you need to go, you're probably not going to last very long there in
Yeah.
Washington. But I don't think most guys would do that. I think they would look at Bobby Wagner and say, "Yep, I'm going to get in line because that guy knows what he's talking about."
Yeah. Does anything else stand out to you about the PFF grades,
It,
or just about the situation just in general?
Yes, because I do feel like these grades are all fairly accurate just as a glance through them. What I will say, though, so much of, if I remember right, Wiley was mostly tackle steel last year. Is that right?
Yeah, he was
Yeah,
exclusively right tackle last season.
he should be a little better at the guard spot than what you're seeing. Alec Reddy is a kind of a guy who I think, when surrounded by better players, he can play better. Not because he's trying harder, but it's just easier. So
Yeah.
Alec Reddy, you could see his grades go up as being a part, and same thing with Biotish, who's a fine center. But I think being able to play along Tunsil and have, you don't have to help Tunsil, you put more help on the rest of these guys, it makes it easier. You should see the grades go up in theory. Is what I would say.
And really, that's why more than anything, in Allegretti, he had his moments last year, right? He
Yeah,
he definitely had his moments where he was just a mauler in the run game, and there were times where in pass he didn't have a spectacular pass block grade, not in the slightest, but
right.
there were times last year where you saw like he really anchored down and provided protection for Jaden. It was just incredibly inconsistent, and I think
Yeah,
the more larger, more dominating guys like a Jalen Carter. Um, I can't even think of any other dominating defensive tackles right now. That was the first one that came to my mind. He struggled with those guys, but generally speaking, he kind of held his own for the most part last year. But I really want Wiley inside there next to Biotish
right.
because with Coleman learning on the NFL level, he did play guard at TCU, but on the NFL level, I want him to be able to rely on a guy like Wiley who was on championship teams, who started in Super Bowls, who started in multiple playoff games.
Yep.
To him not have to worry about a guy like Allegretti and shifting there, with a guy like Allegretti having to shift protection that way when you can shift it all, or you hope that, Tunsil will help out Coleman a good bit, but you don't have to shift anything, right? Because Wiley at guard is a
Yes.
totally different guy. A totally
Yes.
different guy. We're not talking about a struggling tackle. We're talking about a solid, I'm not saying he's a fantastic guard, but he is a solid, probably at least, when he was in Kansas City, top half of the league guard. Um, and we've said as much multiple times at this point, but I really want him to get that right guard spot.
Yeah, I would too. And whenever Cosman's back in, then maybe they re-rotate a little bit based on how everybody's playing at that point. But Wiley being at guard, at least for now, Wiley should be over Allegretti. And listen, maybe Wiley already had his career year with the Chiefs, right? Where he was in
Right.
that guard spot and
Yeah.
playing alongside some other good tackles there. I think it was Schwartz and
Hmm.
Fisher he was playing alongside. Maybe that was best he ever gets. But again, this is where the synergy thing comes in. It's not just words. It's not just, hey, we feel good about ourselves. It's, hey, we got a heck of a quarterback back here who can
Yeah.
rescue our butts when we don't block well. We got two good wide receivers here to work with. We've got a real left tackle now in Laramie Tunsil. Not a guy we hope, a real left tackle. And we've got a coaching staff that feels like they know what they're doing. And so not only do you have the energy pick up for everybody on the team, but they're playing next to better people. And they're being put in better situations because now instead of it being 3rd and 9 with a lousy tackle and an average defense, now it's 3rd and 4 with a good quarterback and a good tackle. We're just in better spots. So it's not just a feel good thing, although that helps and it's important. It's actually the talent uptick and it's better situations that these guys are in. So, man, I totally agree with Wiley being there at guard, but everybody should look better considering that the team's just being better.
Yep. And then one last thing before actually we'll do a quick ad read real quick, and then we can get back to one question before we, start wrapping up. But Tricky Takes, obviously fantastic podcast. Ben, you got something to say about him?
Yeah, so I try to listen to every podcast that comes out on the Box Score Network. We're cranking out a lot of content right now,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially one show that you'll talk about here in a second. But Tricky Takes just last week, they spent the most part of the podcast talking about their All Star selections. All Star game is still a few weeks away, so their selections could change. But these are the players that so far, American League, National League, look really good, and the Tricky Takes guys who are huge baseball fans who played it very well growing up, and as high schoolers, um, they did a good job picking out all stars for both National League and American League. So check that out on Tricky Takes, Apple, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts.
And I do want to shout out real quick. There was a guy I went to school with. He just got called up by the New York Yankees. So that was,
Really?
yeah, really. I
Wow.
haven't looked to see if he's played yet, but I mean, that's pretty dang cool.
Hey, give us
Like,
a name drop, man.
uh, oh my gosh, I want to say his name right. Believe it's Javian Sandrich.
Okay.
It's been a while.
Congratulations.
I went to middle school with this dude. Yeah, Javian
Wow.
Sandrich, pitcher for the New York Yankees. I don't know if he's played yet. I'm actually Googling him right now. But yeah, local guy.
Hey,
And
that's huge.
yeah, so congrats to him. A lot of athletes coming out of this area. Very strange, but yep. Um, and then obviously we have more great podcasts. Because CONCACAF, I mean, they, you said it earlier in one of our earlier episodes. They are busy. They are some busy guys. Um, that so much content that they're putting out right now because there's so much soccer and football going on right now. Um, latest episode, Dom and Andy talk about their trip to see the Club World Cup in person and discuss the United States winning its group at the Gold Cup, plus other assorted vibes from around the soccer world. And there is a lot going on right now. This is soccer season. If you are a fan, me personally, I am not. Not because I don't want to be. It's just I'll plead my own ignorance here. I can't follow it all. There's so many different there's so many different cups and circuits and so forth that I just cannot keep it all straight. There's national teams, there's private teams, there's club team. Like I can't keep it all straight. Thank God they can, and they're great at what they do. So please go check out because CONCACAF, Apple, Spotify, anywhere you listen to your podcasts.
They are fantastic at it. Matter of fact, they did another episode the day before, live and in person, talking about the Gold Cup and the Club World Cup at Midway Point. They're cranking out a lot of content, so
Yep.
go check them out.
And was there one more you wanted to shout out, Ben?
Simon and Friends, he does it every week. I'm on there once a month right now. This past week, we did a redraft of the 2018 NFL draft, me and him both, and in detail too. We didn't just rattle off the names. We came up with the trades that happened in the draft, whether or not we would do those. We talked about some new matches that we think could fit for new teams. So 2018 NFL redraft, that's on Simon and Friends podcast as well.
All right, so we are going to we're going to be talking about our week one starting lineups here in a second, but I do want to just touch on something really quick. If you can, I'll go back one more. The 10 that you can keep. I know this is a very random question, right? But we have our starting five kind of already in our brains, but like the backups, I suppose. Which
Yes,
ones of these, obviously excluding the undrafted free agents because we don't know what's the preseason is going to hold, but just if you can only pick the veterans, right? The guys that you want as the primary backups because there is so much depth and there is unfortunately going to be an odd man out somewhere.
yes. Well, it's interesting you say that because I'm not suggesting the Commanders trade any of this. Let's play a season, see how it goes. But they could, if they wanted to swap for a defensive back or an edger. There are teams that need offensive linemen. To go check out the Houston Texans right now. They got a bit of a kind of a mix up going on. So, but
Yeah,
no, let's see. Okay, I don't want to give away our starting five too quick here.
right.
Um, Alec Reddy is a guy that I wouldn't I could leave out if I had to.
Yeah,
So is Herbig. Um, Looking ahead a year, I do figure between Cosby and Wiley, they're not expensive, but the cap tightens up, right? So it
yeah,
wouldn't surprise me if Cosme or Wiley, one or the other, was not on the team next year, right? Just looking
yeah.
ahead a year. But those are Wiley and Cosme are the guys you would want to keep right now. Alec Reddy and Herbig would be the maybe odd man out in terms of
Right.
keeping depth, I would think.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm surprised Chris Paul is still on this list. He was a sixth or seventh round pick back from the Rivera era. I'm honestly surprised
Yes.
he's still here.
Yeah,
Um, I think the Foster Sorrell pickup that kind of flew under the radar a little bit. I think
it
that kind
did.
of spells some bad news for Trent Scott. He's gonna have a really good preseason and training camp.
Yeah.
We're gonna have two joint sessions with the Patriots and I believe the Ravens. So those two sessions as well as the preseason, those two are gonna be really fighting out for that quote unquote swing tackle spot if it's not Wiley's. Um, and I think the other one's going to get cut there. I would probably give the edge right now to Sorrell, but they're more familiar with Scott, so he might have an edge there as well. I don't know, but Sorrell just has more starts under his belt, better numbers. Um, as far as the guards, the interior there, I think Herbig would be the odd man out just because of the familiarity with Allegretti and Wiley. But I could see Herbig winning one of the starting jobs until Cosme gets out or gets back.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
because I mean he didn't play great in Pittsburgh, but he played well enough to be a starter there. And he has the versatility of
Right.
playing guard and center as well, so that might also be something enticing for them as well.
And just to be
Um,
clear, in case somebody in the audience is thinking that I'm suggesting Allegretti's the 11th guy, that's not what I'm thinking. If we're picking 10, right? So it's Tunsil, Connerly, Wiley, it's Cosme, Allegretti, it's Coleman, Herbig, Biotish. That's 8. You keep Dieter as the center, that's 9. So pick from the other names as you already did, basically, and that's who's left out, right? It would be
yeah,
somewhere in the Chris Paul, Bobby Hart, Sorrell, Scott, Phillips group.
yeah,
That would be
yeah,
getting, yeah, fighting for spots. Yes,
yeah. And then this is our projected starting five. We actually agree on this.
we agree.
We agree on this that this is what we want the starting five to be. Whether it is or not, who knows? Understanding now why Cosme is not the right guard spot is because he's not going to be healthy for week one. That's why I specified week
Yeah,
one starter. Um, I've wanted this for a while. Um, I think this is the best opportunity to do it. I just mentioned a second ago I want Wiley at right guard. Coleman at left guard, I'm not so sure about. It's his job to lose, I feel like, because, he was a third round pick. There's some expectation there. He played reasonably well last year at tackle. Um, Tunsil and Biotish, I mean, they're kind of shoe-ins at left tackle and center. Connerly, that's also a wild card right now because they haven't named him as the starter yet. And they
Right.
probably won't until somewhere, midway through training camp. But I think it's really going to be telling depending on how many snaps he gets in the preseason, if he gets any at all. That would be telling in terms of, where they're feeling him as far as, is he ready to be a week one starter or not? Um, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, see, that's my five. That's the five I want to see. And again, when Cosme comes back healthy, then we may see a little bit more switch up. But this is the starting five I want to see. And Connerly may not truly be ready. Connerly may take his lumps, but I'm okay with that. He's one of five. He's not the guy. If it was quarterback, a lot of times I'm more than happy for them to sit for a while until you truly feel like, hey, now's the time, and we're ready to work through this. This is one guy out of five, and I mentioned it before. You can help Connerly because you don't have to help the other positions. You shouldn't have to help Tunsil very often unless he's going up against one of the elite monsters, right? And even then, you shouldn't have to help him the whole game.
Hmm.
So again, if you're helping one guy out of five, if Biotish and Tunsil are holding their own, and Coleman is getting helped occasionally by Biotish and Tunsil, and if Wiley is being able to hold his own with some occasional help from Biotish, then you send all the tight end and fullback help over to Connerly until he's ready to handle his business, right? It really
Yeah.
changes things. But this is the five. This is it for me. I wouldn't want any other combination to start the season myself.
And the thing is, if it ends up being, Connerly can't, or they're just not comfortable putting him out there week one,
Mm-hmm.
um, that would mean Wiley would probably be tackle then,
Right.
which either means Allegretti, Herbig are
Yep.
going to use that right guard spot, and I just don't feel comfortable doing that, man. I
Right.
would much rather have Wiley there at the guard spot, and even if Connerly isn't fully ready yet, it can't be nearly as bad as having Wiley at tackle and either Allegretti or Herbig at guard. Not saying they're bad, but
Right.
there's everything's gonna get shifted to the right side of that offensive line. I mean, all the blitzes, all the pressures. Um, I think that, and really when you think about it, when Cosme gets back, it's the same line as last year, just adding Tunsil.
Yes.
Nothing would have changed. So this is, I think, the ideal combination. I think this is the combination that maybe the coaching staff is hoping for, that works out this way. Um, I didn't mention it too. Wiley, he has incentives in his contract based on playing time. So he's going to be fighting his what off to, because he can earn up to, I think it's almost $2 million in playing time. So he's going to want to be on the field and stay on the field. Um, So I think he has the inside shot here. I'm hoping he does. Um, but yeah, that's our starting five.
Yeah, I agree. There's something that I refer to, and I really haven't heard anybody else say it, but it's the tilt on the offensive line. When you have three guys who can handle their business, now you've got at least the potential to have a decent, solid line, right?
Yeah,
When you've got four, now you just help the one guy who can't handle his stuff, whether for whatever reason he's hurt or he's not very good or he's young, But that's huge. So, but when you take Wiley over to tackle, even though he's more experienced, he's still going to need help a lot.
yeah,
He just can't hold it all. And then that creates the right guard spot, like you said, which is either Herbig or Allegretti. And while I don't mind, if they were the fifth worst player on the offensive line, I don't mind that. But they might not be with Wiley playing tackle.
yeah.
And then I
That's the problem.
also, yes, so now Biotish has to help Allegretti or Herbig on a lot of plays, which now would leave Coleman not getting help because Tunsil's not getting help. So now all of a sudden you kind of have three spots that are now weakened, and I would just rather lock up four and have
Yeah.
one weak spot, even if he needs a lot of help. That's
Yeah.
that's my preference.
Yeah. And I understand that Coleman's not a lock at left guard.
Right,
But
right.
again, I can't imagine that they're not going to at least give him the first crack at it. Even if he somewhat struggles in training camp and in preseason, which I don't think he's going to be getting a lot of preseason snaps, but
Yes.
um I still think he gets first crack, and it's going to be up to him, during the regular season to figure it out. But I mean, the talent, he's the most talented of the guards, including Wiley.
Right.
So I would like to think that he gets one of the spots.
Yeah, and I would love to think that by again, you never know how these things work out. In theory, by mid-season, the offensive line could be set. But even if it's not totally set, if Coleman has fully gotten comfortable at left guard by mid-season, then you don't have to help him as much, you know. So, you know, that just really opens up more things that you can do all the way across the board.
All right, so I want to play a little spoiler here.
All right.
Don't give out too much, but where does this unit, if this is the starting five, and you can include Cosme, not include Cosme, whatever,
Yes.
where does this starting five rank in your rankings? You don't have to give us an exact number, but maybe a range or give us a little tease there.
Okay. I'll give you two. Not in the top five of the NFL. Okay. And I think everybody expects that, right?
Right,
But somewhere in the upper half of the NFL. Okay. So that's somewhere between 5 and 16
right.
is, and I haven't even finished all my work yet. I'm still tying up some loose ends, going back and separating some of these teams that are very, very close. Because sometimes, listen, honestly, between the eighth best offensive line in football and the 14th, there's not a lot of difference. Okay, they're in
Right,
a cluster, right? But we will
right.
put out a ranking, and they're somewhere between 5 and 16.
So where were they last year in your ranking? And then
Uh,
when can we expect this series to be underway?
this will be July 2nd is when we're doing it. So by July 3rd or 4th, while everybody's on vacation, you should be able to get this and watch it. Okay. Uh, Last year, I don't remember exactly, but it was somewhere around 29, 30,
Yeah,
31. They were not the worst, but they were way down there and have been for 2 or 3 seasons now.
yeah,
It's not good. Hey, and to be honest, hey, listen, I say that. That's from a talent standpoint. They actually played better than 29th in the
yeah.
NFL last year. It was higher than that. But when you step back from a roster build standpoint and you look at the talent, that's where their talent level was at, even though they
Yeah.
played better than that.
Yeah, and it's not there quite yet, but it's definitely taken a massive step up, which is
Yes.
really the theme of this episode is, if nothing else, to be optimistic about it for the first
Right.
time. And like I said, 9, 10 years to be optimistic about this thing.
Right.
Um, because there's actual legit talent here now.
Yeah.
Um, so any other thoughts on the offensive line or offensive lines in general that you care to share, or any other shout
Yeah.
outs?
I will call out somebody else in the division that we love to hate, but we have to respect. That's the Eagles, with their brilliant offensive line. That's not just drafting. We've seen so many front offices draft offensive linemen that everybody else wanted, and those players didn't turn out. So there's the development side of it. And Jeff Stoutland in Philadelphia is probably the best offensive line coach in football. He's developing these guys. Well, we may not have Jeff Stoutland here in Washington, but we will find out over the next season or two if Washington can continue to develop the offensive line people that they draft, right? And that's the
Hmm.
huge, really huge part of it. Because, you can draft all you want, but if the coaching staff can't, and it's not always head knowledge, right? These offensive line coaches know the techniques, right? But still, for some reason, some franchises struggle to develop the guys. So we'll find out over the next season or two if Washington can develop these guys. Early returns, though, so far look good. The line played better than its talent level last year.
Yeah, we will certainly see again reasons to be optimistic. The hope is to be, and you hate to say it because they're a division rival, is to be like the Philadelphia Eagles in this
Right.
regard, to just have pipelines of offensive and defensive linemen that you can just be like, okay, you know, we hate to see you
Yes.
leave, but we got another guy to replace you. So,
Yep.
um, thank you all for listening. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on notifications for Pro Football Plus. Also, one final shout out to Box Score Network, the YouTube channel. A lot of content going on there. Me and Ben's podcast, Odds on Favorites. That was late. We put up a clip from there the other day, talking about the New York Giants quarterback room and offense. Some very strong opinions there, but hey, we have to rag on them, especially me. And you Commander fans would probably appreciate that. So if you like seeing our division rivals get ragged on a little bit, head on over to Box Score Network after you're done. Like, commenting, and subscribing on this video and this channel. Head on over there and see the doom and gloom that is the New York Giants. We'll see you all in 2 weeks. We're going to talk about defense. Not exactly how we're going to divvy it up yet. Still kind of debating on how we're going to divvy that up, but because it's just, as you know, it's a bit of a mess right now. So we're going to figure out how to divvy that up. But 2 weeks from now, we're going to start on defense. And we'll see y'all in 2 weeks.
I'm seeing more than one rumor